I don't very often rant anymore, especially via video. But I'm I'm laughing, but I'm also equally pissed off because of, okay, I'm just gonna explain it instead of try to give some sort of intro. So for years, I've been predicting malefic events. Throughout the astrological community, I've gotten a lot of bullshit from people for doing so, claiming, oh, you shouldn't predict bad stuff. All of a sudden, now that we have these huge, epic, generational signatures with, like, Saturn, Jupiter, and Pluto being all conjunct and all that shit, with all these other, signatures that are equally as devastating, now all of a sudden, the astrological community that's used to predicting a lot of fluff, and that's a lot of the older astrologers, are now on board with predicting malefic stuff, which they usually don't. They don't fixate on that, so they're actually been really wrong about their predictions. And going on to that right there, since they don't focus on looking at planets in malefic ways, they're completely, they're just being influenced by the news. I have predicted that there'd be a pandemic years ago, and I also, after the pandemic started to manifest and I started looking at the actual transits of the time frame when the pandemic's going on, I started looking at it and seeing everybody's going to think that there's a pandemic, but it's really actually not going to be as bad as it is. It's going to be used as a tool to manipulate the basically the developed countries. I've been saying this since January, but there have been other astrologers who are my elders or older than me that have been telling me that no, it's going to be much worse, Ray. It's going to be much worse. I'm like, okay. And even still to this moment, I keep trying to emphasize the fake news thing, or, distorted news and all that, and the Saturn-Neptune square that happened in 2015, it started to get a lot worse than it already is. And if you look at the United States natal chart, you have Neptune on the 10th house in the midheaven, conjunct with Black Moon Lilith, and that represents that they're distorting information and feeding us bullshit, and that stems from the government bodies or anything associated with authority in governments. And since obviously there's politically biased news organizations and there's particular factions of government that coordinate the narratives with the news, it would insinuate that the 10th house, although the 11th house represents sociological institutions and news, that both of them would coincide with that Neptune, Black Moon Lilith conjunction on the midheaven for the United States natal chart, but I digress. Anyway, so that being said, I have been trying to tell people not to freak people out. People are already freaking out on their own because of the recent aspects with Neptune, primarily, and, Neptune and Mercury and it being retrograde, during the height of when this spread started getting really massive, or at least, acknowledged in the United States. I try to tell people, the same fucking astrologers, the same kind of people who were giving me crap years and years ago for going on about how this pandemic's gonna happen, going on about the malefic signatures I see, the unfortunate things that happen. I was getting so much crap. It's those same people that have turned around and started giving into this mass hysteria about this outbreak. And I, funny enough, ironically enough, looked into it to see how bad it will be, because I've been predicting it. How bad will it be? I got the details, and I said that. A lot of what I said has been overshadowed by these older astrologers that are apparently even more informative and more knowledgeable than I am. And this isn't an ego thing, because I don't give a shit if I'm right and you should listen to me instead. The main thing is I actually tried to contact some of these people and say, hey, this is what I came to the conclusion of. It's not that bad. I know you have hundreds of thousands or whatever followers, way more than I do, because you've been doing this a lot longer than me. But I'm trying to explain to you in the charts what's going on. I'm not trying to tell you that you're wrong. I'm not trying to do a dick measuring contest about how I'm better than you. I'm trying to explain to you what you can explain to your bigger base so you can help people not freak out about this as much and handle it appropriately. Because at the end of the day, with my practice, with my predictions, I focus on telling you the real shit so then you can prepare for the real shit. Telling people bullshit, especially coinciding with the fake news and stuff and all this fictitious crap, doesn't fucking help anybody. That's completely contradictory and ass backwards from what astrology represents. And even into this moment, there are still astrologers, the older ones, they're supposed to know more than me, that are telling people that it's still bad. They're ignoring even the statistics that are coming out, which right here, which I actually tried to look it up on Google, but Google is not showing it up as the top of the whatever I put LA County study early results of antibody testing. Hold on, let me just turn this around. Can I turn this around? I guess I can on this. Anyway, so it says early results of antibody testing of COVID-19 infections far exceeds the number of confirmed cases, which is what I've been saying from the get-go. Now there's actual studies coming out, confirmed studies, and I can provide the link on this Facebook post that I'm going to rant about, so I'm not going to read on about it. But basically, it goes on about what I just said, that the numbers have been inaccurate from the start. The numbers and the stats and the models started coming out when Mercury was conjunct with fucking Neptune, when it was retrograde of all things, meaning that there was going to be a distorted form of information. The numbers wouldn't be accurate, either from human error or from intentionally being screwed with. And seeing with Neptune currently squaring the natal Neptune of the United States chart, and the United States of America's chart is notorious for distorting information to confuse the public, basically to keep them on their toes and to contain them, control them, whatever, to pass legislation, blah, 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 blah. Whatever the agenda is at the time, because they can change it for any reason, but they still use the same bullshit all the time. Misinformation to keep control or whatever else. That's going on right now. With Neptune being in Pisces in general, throughout the entire transit of Neptune and Pisces from 2012 to 2024, we're going to see a huge amount of disinformation in the United States. And primarily since the United States, expands outward globally, and a lot of what is said here, or the examples or trends that are set in the United States, reflect outward to a global stage, it would reflect also with that as well. But specifically within the United States, the misinformation and the abuse of information is evident. And as it's, I can't remember the exact degree that the Neptune is in the United States natal chart, but I know it's not in the early degrees, I don't think. I think it's like 13 or something degrees of Neptune. So that would mean that within the last few years, especially when we went into 2016, that's when the misinformation, the exact square between Neptune to Neptune, became evident. And it's still going on right at this moment, which this bullshit even happens. So even, for example, looking up and putting this exact description in Google, I don't get that kind of result. I put it in DuckDuckGo, and I actually get the statistics and the PDFs and all that shit from the studies that are coming out. But you know what's funny? If astrologers actually were, and I'm not saying that some of these astrologers aren't good. They don't predict pandemics. They're not medical astrologers. They don't do this. They don't predict malefic stuff. This is a malefic prediction. I'm sorry. Even though, luckily, the fatality rate is not as high as it is, those astrologers do not have experience in this. I know that for a fact because they've been condemning me for doing it for fucking years. So, what I'm saying is stick to your niche. And when there are other astrologers that have that niche and they're telling you, hey, you might want to relook at this, or hey, don't just continue to ignore that shit and pretend like you know what you're saying. And all the astrologers that have been, inaccurately predicting everything about this pandemic, when all the shit comes out by the fall of this year, about all your predictions that you've been plastering all over the internet through YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever, what have you, you're gonna look like a fool. And it's unfortunate because we should be using this as a science and as a community and exchanging things we know for the sake of intellectual integrity. Not for you to get fucking attention. End rant.